DA. So.
Good evening and welcome to the December 15th Planning Commission. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Kroll, will you please call the roll?
Here.
Commissioner Heikkila.
Here.
Commissioner Bradley.
Here.
Chair Schwartz.
Here.
Commissioner Casey.
Here.
Commissioner Schmolke.
Here.
And Commissioner Geisler.
Here.
Thank you. All right, first order of business this evening is to adopt our agenda.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch.
I make motion to approval of minutes from November
No, we're
17th.
doing the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, the minutes.
Adopt the agenda.
Adopt the
There you
minutes
go.
from
No,
last.
adopt
No.
the agenda.
Oh, adopt the agenda. I'm way ahead. Okay.
I know this is your first night.
Yes. I propose that we adopt the agenda for tonight.
Thank you.
Second.
Reluctantly, a motion from Commissioner Knobloch and second by Heikkila. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. Next, we have the minutes of our November 17th meeting.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Casey.
I would move that we approve the minutes from the November 17th meeting.
I'll second.
Motion by Casey, second by Schmolke. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the minutes are approved. Our first order of business this evening is planning case 21-55, a site plan extension for Mercy Hospital Ambulance Bay Addition at 4050 Coon Rapids Blvd, Wold Architects and Engineers. Mr. Kroll.
All right. Yeah. Good evening, Commissioners. So on the first item here again is a site plan extension for Mercy Hospital. I thought I would just put the site plan up in a rendering just as a reminder of the project. This was approved by the Planning Commission on December 16th of 2021, and then it was approved by the City Council on February 2nd of 2021. Given that this project was in our Port District, it went to the Planning Commission on recommendation and then the City Council for approval. So here they were proposing in addition to their ambulance garage bay, so again, just kind of a site plan showing that addition as a reminder. Again, kind of connecting to their emergency department entrance and just increasing, again, their ambulance bay and a rendering of that project. Staff had met with the applicant a while back. They were kind of discussing some of their construction staging on this project, and then that's where they had indicated they were expecting construction in spring of 2023, and our site plan approval is good for 1 year, so their site plan approval would have kind of ended on February 2nd of 2023, and so they were due to some financing delays from Allina Hospital. There was a delay kind of in starting this project, and so we just wanted to work with them to get that extension. And so when we had met with them, the original site plan and rendering, nothing has changed with the project. It was really just kind of an unexpected delay from Allina Health on their financing that just delayed this project a little bit. And so they're anticipating to move forward here in spring 2023. So in their, the applicant in their initial letter had requested a 6-month extension, and I think talking with our city attorney and other community development staff, we were just recommending to give them the full year that you can grant up, given that they are only allowed one extension, and so if there was some other unforeseen circumstance, they wouldn't have to go through the site plan process again, given that nothing has changed with the project. And so you'll see in our recommendation, we just recommend approval for the full 1-year extension of their site plan approval. That would bring it to February 2nd of 2024. And so the Planning Commission, you'd be making a recommendation to the City Council, and then they would be the decision maker on it on January 17th at their meeting. So if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commission, any questions for Mr. Kroll?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler?
Mr. Kroll, just from a timing perspective, do they have to start before February 2nd? Is the project complete by February 2nd? How's that time date work?
Yeah, I think they just want to at least start construction or have their building permits in by then, which it doesn't sound like they would. We haven't received any building permits yet, and so I think they were probably anticipating March or April. So pretty close to the deadline, but yeah, that 1-year time frame is really to see the building permits and kind of starting that construction.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, what do we want to do for action on this, folks?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Heikkila?
in planning case 21-55, I move we recommend approval of the 1-year extension of the site plan to February 2nd, 2024.
I'll second that.
Motion by Heikkila, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission and will be heard by the City Council at their January 17th meeting. All right, second case this evening is planning case 22-27, a conditional use permit for the Coon Rapids Water Tower, 9585 Foley Boulevard Northwest, City of Coon Rapids Public Works. Mr. Kroll.
All right, yeah, so here the applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit for a new municipal water tower. The site that we're talking about is 9585 Foley Boulevard. It's currently in our Port Evergreen zoning district and also our River Rapids overlay district. And then the future land use designation for the site is commercial mixed use. And so public utilities and structures without outdoor storage is a conditional use in Port Evergreen. And so here they're requesting for that conditional use permit. The City of Coon Rapids currently has 3 elevated storage tanks with a total storage volume of 4 million gallons, in addition to 2 ground storage reservoirs for a total volume of 10.5 million gallons. The current East Water Tower is located at 11316 Foley Boulevard and is aging and in need of substantial repair and rehab. And previous studies and planning efforts have recommended construction of a new 1 million gallon water tower to replace the storage capacity and function of that existing East Water Tower. And the city currently owns 2 abutting parcels, and the intent would be in the future to adjust that shared property line between the 2 lots, knowing that the water tower doesn't need that full site. I believe currently where the water tower proposal is, that site is about 2.2 acres, and then the corner lot there on Coon Rapids Boulevard and Foley Boulevard is 2.8 acres. And I think they would anticipate a plat coming forward maybe in February or March of this year, and we're kind of estimating that the corner lot would become 3.6 acres, and then the water tower site maybe would go down to about 1.4 acres. So on the site plan, the new water tower is proposed here on the south corner of the site. It's south of an existing stormwater pond that was constructed with part of the Foley Boulevard overpass project, and that pond would be expanded to accommodate the water tower and I believe a portion of any kind of future mixed use or commercial development that might be on the neighboring site. it shows a chain link fence with slats around the base of the tower, and then a small portion of a 24-foot paved driveway. While this application, given kind of the limited dimensional standards that are in our code for something like a water tower, a lot of our public utility structures, we believe that it wouldn't need to go through a full site plan review with its conditional use permit, but wanted to at least just kind of give an overview of the layout of the site. And so we still have some conditions with the conditional use permit kind of criteria that I'll talk about. One of those just being, we'd recommend that the chain link fence be vinyl coated and maybe kind of work with them to see if we would want the slats or not on that fence, just to help with some of the appearance on the ground on the site. There's a proposed kind of temporary kind of crushed stone or gravel access drive on the site. And it's proposed to not be paved right away, just to maintain flexibility for any kind of future access on the site. And I think the idea would be whenever there would be a new development on that corner lot, we would receive an easement agreement as part of a condition of that to maintain access to the water tower, and can kind of work with that development on where the kind of driveway would go. So we just want to kind of maintain some flexibility, so we're not paving a driveway that we might have to rip up in a year or two and it would be replaced anyway. I think with the application, they were kind of showing two different examples of water towers. One of them being a hydro pillar style, constructed entirely of steel and painted, and so that's kind of this option A that you see here. And then there's a composite style where you would see the support shaft being concrete and then the steel painted storage tank on top. And they're estimating that the water tower would be about 180 feet tall on the site. So this is just kind of a rendering, I think kind of from the view of on Highway 10 there, to give you an idea of what the tower would look like. In their conditional use permit criteria, the main item I just highlighted as a condition was the preserve and incorporate the site's important natural and scenic features into the development design. And so the applicant and Public Works and the team would work to preserve existing trees as much as possible on the site, but knowing that there would be probably a fair amount removed kind of on that southern portion of the site to accommodate the tower. And they would incorporate, we're requesting that they incorporate additional landscaping where feasible around the stormwater pond, just to help screen the site along Foley Boulevard. You know, I think we as staff recognize that a water tower is pretty tall and is kind of hard to screen, but I think at least at the street level for people kind of walking by or driving by along Foley Boulevard, some just additional landscaping could help soften that view, I think, more from the ground level there. You know, the applicant did note that, you know, some landscaping might be limited due to, we wouldn't want any plantings above any kind of piping, and that they do need to maintain some space around the tower for maintenance and such. But again, just want to have some flexibility and work with them to just provide some additional landscaping where we can. So in planning case 22-27, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit, and then here again outlining just a couple of those conditions that I had mentioned. And we do have our Public Works Director, Tim Himmer, is here as well, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commissioner, any questions for Mr. Kroll?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler?
Mr. Kroll, I know some of our other water towers have barbed wire copper on their vinyl fences. Are we no longer doing that, or is that something we want to prohibit here? Is that something that we plan to do?
Yeah, I don't think that would be something we would recommend here. It is in our code that barbed wire fence is prohibited. So I think some of those other fences might be grandfathered in, kind of a non-conforming use, so I wouldn't recommend that here.
Okay.
Chair Schwartz?
Commissioner Knobloch?
Some question for Mr. Kroll. For the water tower, between option A and option B, is there is there a cost difference or a functionality difference between these two options? I'm just curious. It might be good public information.
Yeah, that might be a good question for Mr. Himmer. That I don't know.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I can certainly answer that question, Commissioner Knobloch.
Sure.
Commission, we are gonna look at both styles, we're gonna bid them to look at what the costs would be. So typically, the composites are a little cheaper from the concrete standpoint because the long-term maintenance is less, you don't have to paint that entire column. However, they haven't been out there long enough to determine how long that concrete will stand up. So there are a few that are starting to spall and rust, and they end up painting them anyway. So when we bid both of them, we'll look at the life cycle costs over 50 years to determine what's the best value, and then the council will decide on that.
Excellent. Part B, thank you very much. A very good answer. Very thorough, I should say. I'm just curious on the new water tower, excellent plan by the city and all the work from everyone involved. I'm curious about, is there any available demographics on, or is there like an area of the city that's specifically deemed that this water tower is going to serve? Is it the existing, or will it have a greater volume and cover more? And if so, like what kind of population will it be able to benefit?
Sure. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I know the applicant, they had indicated a couple of reasons why they chose the site, and I didn't read those off, so I apologize there, but yeah. I think
Sure,
Mr. Himmer
Councilmember,
can help with that.
Commissioner, I'm not here very often, Commissioner Knobloch, Commission. It's going to serve the entire city. It's storage for the entire city. The placement was down in the industrial park, closer to the southern end of town, so we have a lot of larger users down there in the Evergreen area. So that is one of the reasons we chose. Space them out, get it at the same elevation as the rest of our towers. It'll also help control some of the higher pressures we have down in the valley down by the Mississippi River. So putting it in that location helps balance our pressures and also put it closer to some of our high users.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mr. Himmer, I have a question or two. Normally, it's, I guess, lack of a better term, not unusual for cell towers to be placed on top of water towers. Is there any anticipation that that's going to happen at this location? And is there adequate area on the ground for any necessary ground structures to go along with cell towers?
Yes, Chair Schwartz.
Or antennas, rather.
Yes, we are out currently asking the users in the area if there's interest. We haven't received a lot of response yet. As part of the project, we're going to bid an internal mezzanine, which is similar to what we have in the tower on Hanson, where all of the equipment for those users is inside the tower on a mezzanine level, separate from access for the city side. We're going to bid that as an alternate as well. If we have a lot of interest, we'll construct that. If not, we may choose to forego that, but we did supply a 40 by 40 area in the very southwest corner inside the chain link fence where those ground storage units could go if we should choose not to go with the mezzanine.
With the always improving technology and with increased use of cell systems, I would think it would only be a good idea for the city to look at that option very strongly.
Yes, Chair Schwartz, I agree. Unfortunately, we don't control where they want to go. All we can do is provide them the location. If it meets their needs, then they will come. So we've reached out to everyone on our current towers and monopoles and anyone else who has an interest. And as I said, we're not to the finish line yet, but we haven't received any real interest in this location as of yet, but we've got about 3 months to go.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bradley?
Ponying off the chair's question, does the city anticipate that they'll need to put an emergency services receiver transmitter off the tower to augment their system? Or?
Chair Bradley, we have spoken to...
Not chair, sorry.
I'm really confused. I'm out of my element here today. Commissioner Bradley. Sorry, Chair Schwartz. We did contact Anoka County Emergency Response, and they said they don't have a need at this location. We'll follow up with them again to see if that's changed, because it's been about a year since we requested, but that's the first priority for anything on the tower.
Okay, thank you.
Back to my question on adding the feature to the interior of the tower. From past experience, what kind of price does that add in the past?
Chair Schwartz, we're probably looking at, with a separate access door, security, key, stairs, crane to lift there, it's probably gonna be about 200,000. That's just an estimate of all the features that would have to go in. But we'll see when we get the bids.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commission, any other questions at this time? All right, we do need a public hearing on this matter, so at this time I will open a public hearing in planning case 22-27, a conditional use permit for the Coon Rapids Water Tower at 9585 Foley Boulevard Northwest, City of Coon Rapids Public Works. Anyone wish to speak to this public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Commission, thoughts, concerns, motions?
Mr. Chair, I can make a motion.
Commissioner Schmolke,
In planning case 22-27, I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for a new municipal water tower with the following conditions: that the proposed chain link fence be vinyl coated to improve appearance of the site, the additional landscaping be provided where feasible near the stormwater pond and Foley Boulevard to provide screening and soften the view of the tower along the roadway. The city be granted an access easement from any future development on the site to ensure continued access to the water tower, and all engineering comments be addressed.
I'll second. I'll third it.
motion by Schmolke, second by Geisler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This is a decision by the planning commission and can be appealed to the city council within 10 business days if anyone so chooses. Otherwise, good luck, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
All right, our next case is planning case 22-26, a lot split from Michael Nielsen at 11440 Crooked Lake Boulevard Northwest and 11431 Eidelweiss Street Northwest. Mr. Kroll.
All right. So yeah, here again, the applicant is requesting approval of a lot split of existing Anoka County property that currently houses the Crooked Lake Library. So the two addresses where the lot split would occur again are 11440 Crooked Lake Boulevard and 11431 Eidelweiss Street. Current zoning is in our low-density residential 2 district, and future land use designation is low-density residential. And here the applicant proposes subdividing out an approximately 1,169 square foot kind of pie-shaped segment from the parcel that's currently owned by Anoka County and houses the Crooked Lake Library. And the applicant lives at the neighboring parcel and would purchase the proposed segment and then combine it with their property. The library has a wall of windows that overlooks the Nielsen's property, and the applicant had expressed interest in purchasing this segment to facilitate their ability to improve privacy on their lot. And then on November 8th of 2022, the Anoka County Board of Commissioners did adopt Resolution 136, authorizing the conveyance of the Anoka County property in question and approving that proposed lot split and to sell the requested segment to Michael and Janine Nielsen. So here's just an aerial to kind of show you their current property line. Is kind of this bottom portion here. It does angle down, and then kind of the proposed lot split and segment would really just help to square off their property here. And then this was the survey that was part of the application. Again, just to kind of show the existing property line between the two parcels is currently here, the southern line. And then with this lot split would be adjusted to this new northern line here, again, to square that off. There weren't currently any dedicated drainage or utility easements along this impacted boundary, and engineering staff and our legal staff didn't feel like there was a need to dedicate any new easement with this lot split. I think just given that it's kind of anticipated that the library would be here for a long time, that this would be a single-family home on this lot for a long time, and that the lot split really isn't creating a new parcel for development. It will be combined with that parcel to make the existing lot with the single-family home just slightly larger. And so we didn't feel a need to attach an easement there. And so there aren't really any other conditions kind of attached with this that we might typically see. Given that there weren't really a need for easements, our engineering staff didn't really have any additional comments on the project either. So you'll see in planning case 22-26 that we'd recommend approval of the proposed lot split. I guess the other thing I'll add is I thought about adding a condition to combine it with that lot, but I think given kind of the process that Anoka County had outlined, how they written out the legal descriptions on the properties, that it would just be that they would file the parcel combination to do that. And I think given that it was Anoka County property, that they have their process in place to make sure that their property is also properly subdivided and doesn't have any issues on their property as well. So I didn't attach a condition there either. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them, and we do have the applicant here as well if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commission, any questions for Mr. Kroll? Mr. Kroll, a question I would have would be, what's the footage at the street for the triangular piece of property?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's about 18 feet, if I'm interpreting the survey correctly. I think it goes up about 18 feet.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything the petitioner would like to add? All right.
Just turn to questions.
The commission has no questions. I will open a public hearing in this matter. Public hearing on planning case 22-26 for the lot split for Michael Nielsen at 11440 Crooked Lake Boulevard Northwest and 11431 Eidelweiss Street Northwest. Anyone wish to speak to this public hearing? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, close the public hearing and limit comments to the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Geisler.
I move that in planning case 2226 that we recommend approval for the proposed lot split.
Second. I'll second it.
Motion by Geisler, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission and will be heard by the City Council at their January 17th meeting. Good luck. All right, our fourth case this evening is planning case 22-25, a conditional use permit for 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard, LLC, Seamless Gutters and More LLC. Mr. Kroll.
All right. So our final case tonight, here the applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit for a gutter repair business with office warehouse. So again, 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard is in our Port Campus Square zoning district as well as our River Rapids overlay district, and its future land use designation is commercial mixed use. And here, with this proposed gutter repair business, again, we'd classify it, I think, as a service business with office warehouse, which is a conditional use in the Port District, and that's for Suite 119. So the applicant would be operating a small gutter company with space being used to store work vans for the business as well as any materials used for the jobs. And so Seamless Gutters and More often works as a subcontractor for roofing contractors, and they offer installation of seamless gutters and gutter covers. The applicant would not be providing any services out of Suite 119 here, and again would just really be used to store their work vans and the materials that they use for their sites. They indicate that they have 5 active employees and operate February to December from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then I just noted that the entrance and the overhead door to the business is on the west side of the building that I'll show here. So we did have some updates, I think, from our last meeting when we talked about Suite 115, just to some of the tenants in the space. I had actually called the business owner of NJR Gutters that was in Suite 114 that operates a kind of similar business to the applicant, just to kind of understand their parking needs and just trying to get some information on how they've been operating their space, given the parking requirements and a number of things that would apply to this applicant apply to NJR Gutters. And I think through that phone call, actually, the business owner had indicated to me that they had moved out of Suite 114 kind of in mid-October, and that I did confirm this with the property owner as well. So I just wanted to, I'll talk about it a little bit more, as I know parking is often a consideration at this site, and so I'll go into a little bit more detail there, but knowing that maybe there was going to be some concerns about being able to reach their parking minimums on the site, but we now have a vacated Suite 114. And then the other item I would just note is that I have talked to the business owner at Citywide, PPF and Auto Detail that's in Suite 116, and they have shared interest in potentially expanding into Suite 117. If that were to happen, I think we determined that they would need a conditional use permit for that suite as well, given the nature of their business. We haven't received an application for that CUP yet, but I just wanted to put that on here, and I'll kind of account for that in the parking discussion as well. So just wanted to kind of share those two updates kind of at 3050, given this is a multi-tenant building, but then again tonight focusing on Suite 119 that's highlighted here in red. So this is the floor plan that they had. It's about a 2,309 square foot space. Let's see, where's that? You'll see the left kind of half, or the western half of the space. This is where the overhead door is here to the north. So this, the kind of warehouse section of the space would be used for the storage of the vans and some of the materials that they're using. And then kind of this eastern or right half of the building is kind of labeled office. So that's where they'd have a small office area, and I think some additional storage in that part of the building as well. And then there's a shared hallway and restrooms that are used by this suite, and I believe a couple of the other tenants on that part of the building. Just to kind of give you an idea of the space itself. The application or the floor plan noted that there would be a chain link fence installed in this space. There is a mezzanine there. That is a known kind of building code improvement that mezzanine can't support the minimum storage weight that's needed. And so they had indicated that they'd install a fence to prohibit access to occupancy or any storage on that mezzanine in the space. And so here I just added it as a condition to just further kind of clarify what's in the application, that they would install that fence to prohibit access to that mezzanine before a certificate of occupancy is issued, and that the applicant would occupy Suite 119. I did want to note, there was a typo on the staff report. I originally had another condition for the kind of letter F around some of the circulation and parking. That was intended for the reciprocal easement agreement that we had kind of talked about with Suite 115. Given that this suite is on that western kind of side of the building, or the northern side of the building, that I don't anticipate vehicles needing to cross over to 3060 Coon Rapids Boulevard to access this suite, but if they were, that reciprocal easement would just be a benefit to the whole building at 3050. And so I think talking with Grant, our community development director, he had recommended kind of taking that out, so we're not implying that they need two reciprocal easement agreements. It would just be one agreement that would cover the whole building. And so we did remove that, but I noticed I didn't catch it in all of the spots in my staff report, so I apologize for any confusion there. And here, this was just kind of showing on the plans where they had talked about that chain link fence. So this is really the only kind of condition in our criteria that I highlighted. For the parking, for this space, the warehouse portion would require one parking space per 2,000 square feet, and so in this case it requires one. And then the office portion requires one parking space per 200 square feet, so it would require 5 spaces for a total of 6 spaces for this business. And I did receive from the property owner a comprehensive parking plan that shows those 6 spaces. I just noted that to kind of get those 6 spaces, he kind of shifted the spaces over by 1, and so now there's 1 less parking space dedicated for the Coon Rapids Tobacco and Vape Shop there on the end. But then I will also note that kind of given some of the recent tenant turnover in the space, based on the existing uses that are there in the property, I think it requires a minimum of 81 spaces, and I think this plan kind of shows like 79 spaces kind of allocated a little bit weird, but overall there's 89 spaces at this site, so I just want to kind of focus more on that there's 89 spaces, and then with this table trying to show, based on the existing tenants, what the minimum parking requirements would be on our code, and then how it's currently allocated out on that plan. To kind of show, so there's some suites where it'll say, you know, that they are providing more spaces than the minimum, and then some spaces they're providing less than the minimum. But if you take it overall for the site, that they still can allocate out those 89 spaces. I'm happy to answer any questions about that if there's any confusion, but I just tried to show kind of the updated Suite 114 being vacant, and then kind of that proposed citywide expansion. Talking with that business owner, it seemed like they would only be adding 1 additional service bay, so it would require two spaces in that suite. So that's what this table is just trying to go off of the latest information that we have on this site. So then again, for any kind of circulation issues, again, that kind of initial condition was for the reciprocal easement agreement, but again, that's already kind of covered from Suite 115. We wouldn't issue a building permit or a certificate of occupancy until we receive that reciprocal easement agreement, so we feel like that kind of would cover that, and again, would be a benefit to all of the suites at 3050 Coon Rapids Boulevard. So here we're recommending, again, approval of the conditional use permit, and then with those number of conditions, just ensuring that there is a certificate of occupancy is issued before the tenant would occupy the space. And then again, about that fence to ensure that there's no occupancy or storage use of that mezzanine. And I can help answer any questions that you might have, and then we do have the applicant and the property owner here if you have any questions for them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Commissioner, any questions for Mr. Kroll?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler?
So, Mr. Cole, given that we've got kind of a building code item on our conditional use here, it seems odd that a building code violation is being conditioned away by just putting up a fence. I'm not, why is the city not requesting that the mezzanine either be fixed or removed?
Sure. Yeah, that could be something I could, I didn't have a chance to talk to our chief building official about. I think I had just, given kind of on the plan, they were indicating that they would install a fence to at least prohibit that use as long as there's no occupancy or storage up there. That I guess I kind of felt that maybe it'd be okay if the mezzanine was still there, but no one's actually using it. So yeah, I didn't really think too much about it, I guess, in that it was just kind of what they were showing in the plan, so just wanted to add that as the condition.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Bradley?
may I direct this question to council? For compliance, what do you suggest on that issue just raised?
That's a tricky legal question.
That's why I asked you.
It's there already, so you could do either condition. I mean, frankly, the mezzanine at the last one, we required it not be utilized. This is a similar thing here. I think, frankly, if I was the applicant, I'd just remove it, but I'm not the applicant. We're in that building a lot. We'll know if it's being used.
Anyone else with questions at this time? Mr. Kroll, I have a few questions around the parking and the table that you provided. You say the tobacco shop in 122, you took one spot away. So is that one away from the 11 that they currently have?
No,
Down to 10?
No, so the minimum required is 12, and on the previous parking plan we saw from the application for 115, they had 12 spaces. So now they're currently showing on the plan they provided 11 spaces. But again, if you kind of think of it just site-wide, well, I know they're only showing like 11 designated spaces. It's not like each of those spaces like is individually signed and people are gonna park where they park on the site. And that there's still enough parking spaces like site-wide that they can, with those 89 spaces, that they would still be able to accommodate it, given that Suite 114 shows 10 spaces on that plan, but now there's no tenant there. So it's just kind of, those are 10 spaces on the site that aren't designated to a tenant. Does that kind of make sense or helpful?
Not really.
Okay.
And then further along, 118 shows that it's required to have 8 and they only have 4.
Yep, that's correct. So the minimum parking there would show that they need 8 spaces. They've showed 4 on their comprehensive parking plan. But again, you know, it's kind of a question if, I guess I don't know, this could be a question for the property owner if they feel that applicant needs 8 spaces. But again, because now there's kind of 10 spaces designated to Suite 114 that aren't being used, theoretically, you know, someone could be parking over there to still get their 8 spaces. This table was really just try to help what they were showing on their parking plan.
But the required parking is what's required by ordinance, not what's required by what the petitioner feels should be used.
Yep, that's correct. But again, so they're showing 4 on their plan, but again, there's now kind of 10 spaces that are also shown on the plan that aren't designated to a suite, or given that it's vacant, no one's using those spaces, so people could, those other 4 spaces can come from those 10 spaces at 114.
And Mr. Chair, I might clarify, as a general rule, when the city is considering parking requirements for multi-tenant commercial buildings, generally what we would do is apply the retail parking standard to the entire building, and as different tenants come and go, it's expected that they share parking. So at the, Riverdale Village Shopping Center, if a restaurant comes in, that might have a higher parking demand, but it can share spaces with other uses. So we're not looking necessarily at use by use. In this case, we have a building that has a lot of conditional uses in it. So while it isn't required that every single use show its own parking spaces, we do apply an additional layer of scrutiny to this. So it wouldn't be our interpretation that if, for instance, some of the retail uses aren't showing enough specific parking spaces to them, that we would not consider that to be non-compliant. It's just that with the conditional uses, we just want to give it an additional level of scrutiny to take a look at the parking situation. It's possible for uses to share parking, but we just want to make sure that we're not creating a problematic situation.
So then if we're taking the 10 spots from 114 and spreading them out over these other areas, in essence, that means 114 has 0 parking?
Well, not necessarily. I think I'm just saying right now it's currently vacant, so those 10 spaces are just kind of there, not being used. And I think, again, it would depend on whatever the new applicant would be, whether a new tenant that moves in, if it's a permitted or a conditional use. In the case that if it was a conditional use, we would again kind of go through this process, have that extra layer of scrutiny, and they would have to show that they can provide enough parking for that use. But, if it's a permitted use or a retail use there, kind of to what Matt was just talking about, people are sharing parking, we don't have that additional level of scrutiny on how those spaces are used.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bradley.
Mr. Crowley, Mr. Brown, I think, just said that they were looking at these numbers for parking based on a retail scenario. Isn't it true that most likely with this applicant being a service business, that there should be maybe a little more flexibility, you think, for the parking requirements?
Yeah, so that was on this table, kind of shows based on the use as we understand it in those spaces, like what parking would apply. For this applicant, we didn't apply a general retail standard, but we have that kind of broken up as the warehouse parking and then the office parking. They're not offering services out of this business, so the parking that they need is really just for the employees. They indicated that they have 5 employees. Talking with the business owner through this kind of process, that I know some of the employees live together or live close by and do carpool. But if all 5 employees drove separately, probably at most they need are those 5 spaces for their 5 vehicles. And here they have, our code would require 6, and they show that on the plan.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bucconi.
Commissioner Bradley used the term flexibility. I want to be clear, this project doesn't require parking flexibility.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Schmolke.
So I guess the way I'm looking at this is, as an employee, as a customer, I appreciate having this breakout because it still says that there's 89 spaces needed for this site overall, and here's a way that they've broken it out to show that they believe that they can accommodate the parking for all the different tenants in the building. If I was a customer coming, and I know not a lot of these businesses even have customers actually coming into the site, it's not like these spaces are color-coded, so I know which one to park in that's specific to the particular tenant. So I kind of feel like I don't think it's this yeah, it's fluid, it's very fluid, it's a great word, and, so I'm not worried about that, it's like they're showing the 89, they're accommodating it. I guess the question I would have is, if there are complaints, whether it be from the public or from the employees or whatever, about the parking, who are they going to go to? Is it the property owner? Is it the city that's gonna get complaints? I guess that's the question I would have. And then to say, do you still feel comfortable with this? I'm okay if you are, you know?
Well, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Bucciccone?
it depends on how the parking becomes an issue. If people are
Okay.
parking on city streets, then that's certainly an issue we deal with here through the police department, or sometimes they get to talk to me on my prosecution job. If it's solely within the property and they're having a hard time with people not having places to park, frankly, as long as they're meeting our standards, and right now in this assessment they are, there's not a lot we can do to deal with the relationship between tenant and landlord. So that would be from the tenant to the landlord if it's solely within the site.
So they'll start with the landlord.
Yes. If
Correct.
it's creating issues on city streets, that's when we're able to
Perfect.
get involved.
Thank you.
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch?
Excellent discussion, and Commissioner Schmolke, but also Mr. Brown. But isn't this essentially, it's a smaller retail shopping center. It has multiple businesses, multiple varied businesses. It's service, some are not, some are vacant, some are just internal. I think we have to maybe put it in the focus of the mind as like it's like a smaller Riverdale shopping center concept. And I think with the total spaces provided on site, it's an excellent breakdown of what the site can support and what our needs are, and it's just being portioned out differently than we're used to. So I think in the big scheme of the overall analysis of this, it seems ideal. It just seems to work. Everything is in its place. All the requirements are met. And I think we should have adapt to it and accept it. It seems to solve everyone's issues, so.
Mr. Kroll, I also have an issue with the mezzanine and the use of fencing to prohibit the use of it. I mean, once people are inside the building and the doors are closed, who's gonna control whether they're going around or over the fence?
Yeah, I know, like, as part of for getting the certificate of occupancy in the building permits, there will be an initial inspection, and so we would, make sure the fence is there, but, yeah, you're correct that maybe we wouldn't always know if someone's going over the fence, but I think I know our building inspection team is in this building pretty frequently, just given kind of the constant turnover of tenants as well, that hopefully we'd be able to catch it, but I guess, yeah, again, if the commission feels that they want to change that condition to remove the mezzanine, it sounds like that is a possibility, and if that's something folks are more comfortable with, certainly could be changed in the condition.
Well, I feel personally, my thoughts are the only way I would support this is if the mezzanine was removed.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Bradley?
should I wait until it's just a commission discussion?
No, we can discuss now.
Okay, I'd like to direct the question to you. I was wondering if we shouldn't leave some discretion with the city on how to deal with it.
And our city council said they are in that building frequently. You said the inspection team is in that building frequently. I think I'm comfortable with that oversight from 2 or 3 different viewpoints. Let them handle it internally within the city. That would be my thought. I didn't mean to horn in on your
No.
conversation there, but.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Heikla.
My concern, I guess, was, is there liability? Whose liability is it if somebody's injured? Is it the property owner then, correct?
Right, Mr. Chair. That's right up my alley.
Since it's a legal question,
You're-
let's hear our
Prosecutor.
legal answer.
Not just the prosecutor, though. So, if it falls within the property owner and the tenant, both of them should probably have insurance. If someone gets injured on that mezzanine in a known dangerous thing, then both would likely be liable. The city would, you never say never in the law, but this is as close to never as liability comes. While I have the microphone, my suggestion would be if the commission would like the city staff to be able to deal with it, one condition that's possible is require removal or bringing it into compliance with code for the mezzanine. If it can be, frankly, our chief building official would know that. He's not here, but.
All right, thank you. Well, we'll let that sink in and think about that for a few minutes. Is there anything the petitioners would like to add to the case? Come up to the microphone, give your name and address for the record.
Hello everyone, my name is Rustam Mukharamov and my address is 7208 Trillium Lane, Edina, Minnesota 55439. And as far as the mezzanine, I would like to add that it's actually an office space on the main floor, and then it has a wall and then it has a ceiling. So I don't think it's just the mezzanine itself, it's like an office, it's a roof of an office. And it's pretty sturdy. Before, it used to be a whole second floor, and there was a lot of stuff in there. And when I talked to Rodney said you either need to bring an engineer who will give you like a structural, like a paper, like a structural engineer paper that'll say, hey, this can support this many pounds per foot, and then you'll be able to use this mezzanine, or you need to put a fence showing that you're not going to use it, so it's easier. So at the moment, we thought that path of just putting a fence and forgetting about it would be easier, so that's what we kind of went with. And if it comes back where we have to tear it down, it would be a lot more intense and expensive endeavor, and then we'll have to rip out the office that's built out. So in that scenario, we'll try to hire a structural engineer and pay him maybe $1,500 or something, and they'll evaluate and they'll say, hey, you can have up to 20 pounds per foot of storage. And then like people will be able to store tires or some lighter stuff, or they'll say, hey, you can store 100 pounds per foot, then it can be some heavier stuff like tile or like whatever. So that's how that conversation went, and I just wanted to share it with you guys, because you guys haven't really seen what it is. As far as the parking, I think the actual parking lot might have about 91 spots. And we will, after this, we will go back and count everything and make sure it's super accurate. And if you go to the property at any day, parking lot is about 80% empty or 70% empty. And I think one of the mistakes that we did with this table is we used wrong uses on the tenant spaces. Like Suite 118, I think they use it more like a maybe showroom or storage. And I think on showroom, it's 500 square foot for one parking spot. And storage is like 1,000 square foot for one parking spot. And those people are never there. They just have their stuff, and then once a week they bring a customer in, They pick something from the space and then they take it. It's not like a retail space where they're open 24/7 or, 8 hours a day and customers always come in. And I think several of the other businesses, maybe not several, but a couple or few, are not really run like retail, but more like storage or service business or whatnot. And I think their parking requirement is much less, and I think we'll have to maybe spend some time with Dakota, if he has time, and kind of brainstorm this together and come up with a parking calculations that are more aligned with the vision for the spaces and tenants and the building. So then we would be pretty well within the required amount. And I think that's pretty much all I had.
Can I just make one clarifying comment on the 91 spaces?
Certainly.
Per 89? I believe you're correct that I think some of the plans that we've received in the past showed 91 spaces, but then again, those 91 spaces show kind of striped spaces in front of overhead doors, or in the case kind of back by 115, don't actually meet our standard dimensions for a vehicle to be able to properly back out and turn around. And so that's where that 89 comes from, based on the information that I've been given by the property owner and from my site visits there. This is kind of the best estimate that I have, but happy to continue to work with the property owner to continue to get additional information and kind of keep modifying this and updating it, so.
All right, thank you. Any other questions before we have a public hearing? All right, this time I will open a public hearing in planning case 22-25 for a conditional use permit at 3050 Coon Rapids Blvd, Seamless Gutters and More LLC. Anyone wish to speak to the public hearing? Anyone wish to speak to the public hearing? Seeing none, close the public hearing and limit comments to the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
So I just want to make some general comments on the parking thing. I think we need to look at, the site is the site as a whole. That's the big piece there. My concerns from the last meeting about the parking site was really more around the fact that it seems like, based on the intensity of the uses that are currently there, that it was going to be hard to fill the vacant pieces. So my concern was more of, if we got more intensive uses in those vacant properties, would we have enough parking to continue to go? That was more of my concern here. As this stands right now, there's enough parking to meet the current uses that are there, and I'm okay with that. I just think that as we progress, then the buildings get fuller and fuller, and hopefully tenants stay around and they get used. It may become more difficult to continue to meet that parking standard as a whole. With respect to the mezzanine, having been in plenty of factories in my time, that kind of overhead space above a 8-foot office in a 20-foot space or something like that. I can understand why we would do a fence to block it off. I can understand that, given that that is a way to prohibit it, and it doesn't require the complete reconstruction of the office space. If it was a freestanding mezzanine with walk-under space or something like that, I think I'd have a different opinion. But if it's literally just the roof of the office, I can see this as a reasonable exception to it. I wouldn't normally consider this in any other space, but the undue burden to the applicant of having to basically rebuild the office space all the way up to the ceiling to accomplish the same thing that a chain link fence could do. And given that staff has indicated their volume of visits to the site to ensure that things are still operating in a safe and constructive manner, I can be comfortable with where this was. I just wanted to get a better understanding of why staff was comfortable with a fence versus just fixing it. So as this stands, I think there's nothing here for me that says say no tonight. I think I think everybody knows what our concerns are in general around parking, around building code pieces, around general property upkeep. We've talked about this almost every month. So I'm okay with this as this stands right now.
I would concur with that, Mr. Chair, that I'm comfortable with the recommendation to approve the proposed conditional use permit with those conditions.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Schmolke,
In planning case 22-25, I'll move to make a motion to approve the proposed conditional use permit with the following conditions: that the property owner and applicant ensure a certificate of occupancy is issued before the proposed use occupies and operates in Suite 119, to ensure the conditional use is not detrimental to public health, safety, or the general welfare. A fence will be installed to prohibit occupancy and storage use of the mezzanine in Suite 19. My one question on that is, do they have to do that to get the certificate of occupancy?
Yeah,
That'll be-
typically
Okay.
through that process, they'll check for that and make sure it's done before they issue it.
I apologize for not asking that first. Does that need to be tagged on to condition number 2? Okay.
I don't think
I'm
so.
seeing a no. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
And then compliance with Title 11 of City Code.
Second.
motion by Schmolke, second by Geisler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Chair Schwartz opposed. This is a decision by the Planning Commission and can be appealed to the City Council within 10 business days if someone so chooses. Otherwise, good luck.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on to other business. Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, for our January Planning Commission, we do have a conditional use permit application for Great River Energy. They currently have a substation kind of near, actually, City Hall here in our Public Works building. And so they're looking at expanding that substation, and I don't believe we have a conditional use permit on file for them. And so given that the public utility structure is a conditional use in the residential district, we just want to ensure that we have that on file. And so we'll have kind of their plans and discussion on their expansion. And that's what we got for January so far.
Just the one case.
Just the one, yep.
All right. And Commission, anyone have anything for other business?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler.
Mr. Kroll, in the last case, you mentioned a requirement of if one of the applicants wanted to expand their business to one of other nearby suites, that they would have to do an additional CUP. Aren't they already covered, or is that because they're changing the square footage that it requires an update? Or how does?
Oh, sure. I guess Blair seems eager to answer that question.
So hypothetically speaking, if you expand a conditional use, we view it as requiring a new application.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and I think, just kind of given what we've done in the past with multi-tenant buildings like that, because it's really tied to a specific suite and not the entire building, I think that's also just part of it too, of why we require that for an expansion into another suite in that building.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Have there been any businesses lining up to move into those new, that structure going up down by the, I want to say the barbecue place, but just off of Northdale by, yeah, the warehouse kind of business. Yeah, Eagle Street.
I don't, and I don't know, Dakota, if you have seen any tenant build-out applications come through. I believe they're still really just working on the shell there.
Okay.
I know they are marketing the building. I don't believe we've seen build-out permit applications for specific tenants, but it's also possible, I'm just not recalling.
Yeah, that's like that Coon Rapids Tech Center
Yes.
building. Yeah, I haven't seen any building permits yet come through for any individual tenants in that space yet. So,
Okay. because it looks like it's going up structurally. It's starting to look finished from the outside, but, okay.
What about the property in Riverdale that was being, the old JCPenney site that's being rebuilt into 5? Is there anything besides the one that we've already looked at?
On the JCPenney site, yeah, so a few updates there. I know the Sierra Trading Post, which is one of the tenants there, their build-out is still under construction. And I believe that space is slated to be ready sometime in the spring. The grocery tenant, which I know we had received and applications for, approved permits for, work on that has stopped from what I understood, so things are kind of in a holding pattern on that. Obviously, that space is widely rumored to be Amazon Fresh, which the property owner has confirmed, but it's my understanding that they've kind of hit the pause button on a number of their projects around the country, so that's kind of on hold. They still do have a lease there, so nothing is changing at this point that we're aware of, but the construction is just kind of on pause for various reasons.
Mr. Chair, well,
Hi, Clay.
we're discussing this shopping center. How about the area between Schneiderman's and Dick's, where they were going to put the hair salon in?
Yeah, and that, obviously that wasn't too many months ago that came before you, and I'm trying to remember, Dakota, what the status of building permits was. What have we?
Yeah, I don't think we haven't received any building permits from the city. I believe they were still working through some of their permits with the watershed district. So as far as I understand it, that project is still moving forward. We just haven't received any building permits yet for it.
Since we're doing the spin around, how, the East River Road property, that one seems to be coming along, any additional activity there yet, or they're still building?
Yeah, that's kind of the same situation where I know they're still working on the shell. We have not received any permit applications for specific tenants. I know they're marketing, and then we chat with Scannell here and there on different options. So it is still undetermined what the exact tenant will be there.
All right, anyone have anything else?
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Casey, second by Noble, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.